Hello and welcome to the Bitstocks podcast, coming at you from a cloudy city of London. We're here at the Bitstocks office and coming at you with episode 5, Cyrus Yari, and I'm joined by our usual co-host,
Stephen Arthur.
How you doing, mate?
Very well, how are you?
Yeah, good, mate. Good. Busy Monday so far.
Busy Monday doing the vlogging as well.
Indeed. Vlogs are coming out pretty soon. We're pretty amped for that. And we have a special guest in the building. But before we get in and introduce a special guest, just the usual stuff, guys. Please hit the likes, hit the comments, give us any feedback as you wish. Anything you want covered in upcoming podcasts, drop the comments. Please do not consider any of this as financial, tax, legal, or any form of investment advice. And yeah, so special guest today. We've got our very one and only James Coughlan in the building. James.
Hello guys, how are we doing? Thank you for having me.
Very welcome, mate. Really excited to have you on. Introduce you, give a little bit more insight, hopefully have you answer some questions that can help the wider audience. I know we've had quite a few questions coming in, right?
Yeah, we have indeed. So before we dive in and ask James, we've got a lot that we want to discuss with him. We're excited to have him on. Before we get into any of that, we'll just cover up some of the news. So maybe one big bit of news that you've seen in the past week.
Yeah, sure. So one of the big pieces I've seen is all to do with GMO. So internet giants GMO have planned to launch a stablecoin pegged by the yen. Now, they've said that this stablecoin will help their cryptocurrency business settle transactions at a much quicker rate. So rather than liquidate cryptos going through OTC to get it back into fiat currency, you can plug it into a stablecoin, which is a lot less costly and a lot quicker. Now, recently there's been tons of news with regards to stablecoins. Gemini and Circle, to name a few, have released their own or plan to do so. The GUSD from Gemini and the USDC from Circle. Now, this pretty much comes at a significant time because the People's Bank of China have also, an economist from the People's Bank of China has come out and said he is exploring doing the same for China. So in my opinion, it's great news. It just gives pretty much a reason to not let market cap bleed from cryptos straight back into fiat. It keeps the market cap all in cryptos, which is great. It could lead to more stability, natural growth in line with potential growth, and less volatility. Now that brings me on to the last point, less volatility. One of the reasons why funds aren't involved in the space at the minute is because cryptocurrencies aren't in line with their value at risk. It simply means they would need to hold a lot more essentially in collateral before integrating cryptos in their portfolios. Greater stability, less volatility through stable coins can actually help this. So that's one thing that me and the team have been monitoring a lot recently. I'd love to hear your bit of news.
Yeah, before I do get onto my bit of news, just want to touch on yours as well with the stable coins. Last week, we actually saw Tether fall at one point. I think it had fallen by about 7 to 8% in the markets. A lot of people had lost hope in the actual true reserve USD holdings of the company and major withdrawals at once and panic withdrawals, you could say. We saw that other stable coins were actually on the up on that day or the couple of days that followed, sweet. But yeah, mate, so the Goldman one apparently, so Goldman are backing correct me if I'm wrong, they're invested in Circle and Circle.
Yep, that's right.
And Circle, who have done the essentially the stable coin, the USDC, apparently they are being audited. Their reserves are being audited by Grant Thornton. So just to give people more comfort and assurance, apparently they're doing it properly. So one to keep an eye on in terms of the stable coins. My big bit of news from the past week. So Fidelity, they're actually launching a custody and trading service for enterprise clients. They hope to, attract institutional investors, including hedge funds, family offices, market intermediaries, and the like. It will actually be, other than the custody, it will be trade execution as well. And apparently they'll hold the cryptocurrencies in cold storage so they call it multi-level physical and cyber controls. And the biggest bit to come out of this whole Fidelity news is that Mike Novogratz has actually announced that his company, Galaxy Capital, will be one of the first wave of clients for Fidelity. So big news there. We've been waiting for the institutions to pour in. It's taken them a while to wake up, but I guess finally they are. And goes back to the whole Jamie Dimon thing, how he was bashing Bitcoin in the past. And then I think that was for him to maybe drive the price down before he could actually buy back on the low, which is what he did a few months later. So smart move by the institutions, but they are late to the game. But yeah, we'll get on to the actual main chunk of the show. James Coughlan, he's part of our advisory team, and James has actually been with Bitstocks for a very long time now. I mean, you joined, correct me if I'm wrong, shortly after the start of the founding of the firm.
It was a little bit after that. So my background predominantly was in gold prior to being at Bitstocks. It's very interesting to look at the synergies between gold and obviously cryptocurrencies themselves. When you look at the kind of meats and bones of the two products themselves, you actually see a lot of similarities in the two. So I feel like it was quite an easy shift for me to come across. It was about 2 years ago that I joined onto Bitstocks team as one of the portfolio managers. I've also worn a couple of other hats here at Bitstocks, which has been quite interesting to kind of be a part of. When a company's in its fruition and it's building, you find that, you can add value in different places rather than just, what you've been paid for in the first place, which I find is an incredible journey to be on, which is good.
Perfect. And if you could just give people maybe a glimpse of your typical day-to-day, what you do, and just your general experience to date, really.
Yeah, well, I'm lucky enough to liaise with you guys pretty much, most of the day in terms of getting what's the latest and greatest in terms of coins and information. Once we've obviously had our good morning meeting and we've gone through the news, we then kick off our day with client updates. We also, in conjunction with client updates, ensure that we are looking around and scouring the market for what we feel is the next driver as well, and making sure that AML and KYC stuff is done to the best of the ability as well when clients are onboarded. I think the most important thing that we do as portfolio managers, though, as well, is about the educational journey that we provide to our clients along the way. It's about ensuring that people fully do understand exactly what they're getting involved in before they do. I think that there's a lot of news and media out there where people seem to see this as some sort of get-rich-quick scheme. Yeah. It's totally not the case, and it's our job to ensure that people understand that before they are onboarded at Bitstocks.
Yeah, so you guys, from what I know, also attend tons of meetings outside of work, institutional as well as retail client meetings. One of the questions we had was Bitcoin has gone from an all-time high of around $20,000 just around December time, and we've seen it peel back off. Now we're currently trading at $6,500. I'd love to know your opinion on this.
It's a real interesting one, and something that I've been having a lot of long conversations around, regardless whether it's institutions or retail investors. The question keeps on cropping up. And I think the one thing that I like to kind of instill in the people that I'm speaking to is that this market is very much in its infancy. I think to be concerned by the price at this present time is not the right way to be looking at things. What we need to be looking at is the technology and the way that the technology is growing on a day-to-day basis. There's some fantastic developers working on a lot of these projects, and we're only seeing things get better and better. Just because that isn't transcending into the price straight away, that's when I come back to infancy. When something is at its very early stages, it doesn't mean that someone's just going to kick off and it's going to be perfect from day one. And I think to kind of go along that route would be unrealistic. But what we have seen is obviously a period of time where there's been confusion within the market. And now what we're starting to see is that confusion get pushed away. Regulatory talks, start to make a little bit more sense than they were previously. We're seeing the industry grow as a whole, and off the back of it, it's been interesting. But my major point to it is not to worry about the price. It's about the technology. Mm-hmm. Providing we keep seeing infrastructure being built around it and development work, we will always see, the price pick up at some point. Mm-hmm. But at this stage, that's not my concern. It's more about the technology.
So you would say that it's, we've had a massive, great growth. It's only natural that we retrace some sort of distance, right? We can't just go on an exponential increase or a straight linear line. We have to draw back, pick up momentum, which will pretty much propel us on to the next big movement. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think a silly little analogy that I like to use is if you imagine a man running up a mountain, right? He's going to sprint away. And the faster that chart goes up is like that guy running that little bit faster. When anybody sprints, they're going to get to a point where they actually find that they're going to get tired. And not only are they going to get tired, they're going to need food and resources. And that's when we start to see the market pull back again. Just because that sprinter needs his food and his water before he pushes on again doesn't mean that we're not going to see it again. It just needs a little bit more time. It's just this one's been a little bit of a long break, in my opinion. He's been eating Snickers bar and a bottle of water for far too long now.
So one thing I wanted to touch on and get your thoughts on is all the sort of regulatory changes that we're seeing in the marketplace and big moves from institutions, and one big bit of news is the whole BAKKT, the BAKKT exchange. So actually two things happening in November. So right now it's the final, I'm coming up to the final week of October, that we're anticipating in November is not only the BAKKT launch in November, where there's also a deadline for reviewing, I believe it's 9 Bitcoin ETF applications. So these, I'm trying to recall, I believe these 9 ETF applications were previously rejected, but they've come up for review again. And they're applications for not actually, they're not ETFs on physical holdings of Bitcoin, but rather Bitcoin futures. I personally don't think they'll get approved. I mean, we've not even seen the actual physical holdings ETF, which is the VanEck SolidX, get approved, and that's been pushed back all the way to the end of the year again. What do you think of it? What do you make of that whole piece and the whole BAKKT piece as well, those two?
All right, let's start with BAKKT. BAKKT, I think, is going to be incredible for the sector. I think what people have been waiting for now is a situation where institutional money can come back in a safe, secure way. And what we realize with BAKKT is it's got a robust custody service, which is extremely important to institutional funds coming back into this space. As well as the fact that it's actually going to be a safe and secure exchange. These things are very important when it comes to actually making sure that your coins are secure. For a hedge fund to go and put 200 or 300 million into cryptocurrencies and do it in a light where they are not sure that those coins are safe and secure is not going to be possible. Hence why we've constantly seen institutions kind of pull back rather than push forward when it comes to crypto. We're seeing across the board people come out left, right and center at the moment saying that crypto is a good thing and saying that blockchain technology is without a doubt going to change the world. But it's going to be in a situation where we need all of the infrastructure at the start to be right. The onboarding ramps, the offboarding ramps to be in the right setting for these players to get involved, as it were. So that's a little bit on BAKKT. In terms of ETF, from my side of things, Winklevosses look like the strongest kind of party within that kind of section at this moment in time. I don't personally see anything happening, this side of the year. Personally see Q1 next year, if not Q2. I think the thing we have to be real to is these guys have been given knockbacks, but each time they're given a knockback, they're given the tools as to where they've gone wrong. And each time they push forward, we're getting that little step closer. Yep. I think that those two in conjunction together, BAKKT and ETF, getting the kind of green light and go ahead is going to be massive for this sector.
Yeah, definitely. And I know everyone's got their own views on ETF, because what was your outlook on timeline and when you think ETF will get approved? We discussed this the other day.
Yeah, so very, very similar to James. I think the ETF coming up, or the ETFs coming up, will not be approved. And I think at that point, we're going to see Bitcoin dominance start to really fall back a little bit. We're currently trading at a dominance of 54%, so 53.4%. I think it's unnatural, and I think a lot of it is hype driven by the ETF. Like James mentions, where a market is so in its infancy, it's simply unnatural for the ETF to be approved. I think the space needs to grow, it needs to mature a lot more. I mean, especially with assets like store of values like gold, platinum, even some other commodities like wheat. It was really, really long before an ETF was approved. So I don't think it's going to be this year. I do think around Q2 to Q3, we're going to get some solid proposals. And I think towards the back end of next year, they will be approved. But I really do have to sort of stress, I agree with James. I think the first and foremost, the most important thing is security. Now, as we see more people like Fidelity and Goldman transition into prime broker roles within our sort of ecosystem, it really does give institutional investors the confidence of entering, knowing that their assets can be settled in a fully secure manner.
You mentioned about dominance. I just wanted to revisit that just briefly. In regards to dominance, what we are seeing 100% without a doubt, in my opinion, is the general market seeing that there is going to be an ETF approval at some point. But I think what we're seeing is people unsure. So we'll see dominance kind of fluctuate at this present time as it's coming up to dates of ETF approvals, or the latter. It may not be that way, but what we are seeing is people obviously lump up on their Bitcoin holdings on the view that they feel like it's going to go parabolic if the ETF result is positive. And I think touching on what you said is very paramount of importance to kind of push back to, is that actually when you're sitting in a position where you think it's going to be approved, this is great, but at the same time, is the money going to stay in Bitcoin, or is the money then going to flood back into the altcoins? I think it's a very fair question to be asking at the moment.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we've transitioned it with historical dates. You and I have done it. We've got a whole spreadsheet on it. Money, it's not like new capital's coming in at the minute, even though VCs are injecting. It's money simply transitioning from alts to Bitcoin and vice versa. So yeah, very fair point.
Yeah, the ETF piece that you both touched on, as I said, the one which is on the Bitcoin futures coming up, I have zero hope in that getting approved. The actual ETF on the Bitcoin physical holdings, which is the VanEck Solid X, I personally think at the very earliest that could get approved is back end of next year, but even that's unlikely in my opinion. Obviously, everyone's got different views. I think that could even be pushed to 2020. It will take them a while to get comfortable with it. It will get approved, just not yet. We've obviously discussed this a few times, and as there's more noise in the markets coming up to all these proposals that keep getting rejected, it's discussed more and more. And I just think people need to stop, thinking that price reacts whether you like it or not to this news. I just find it still immature. The market's immature and in its infancy, because it shouldn't really react as much as it does, because it's still too soon for these ETFs to get approved. They just need to get comfortable with it naturally. But yeah, so one other thing I'd really like to get your thoughts on is just on the back of that topic is your outlook. So we've seen turbulent times. The markets are now somewhat stabilized with much less volatility than recent months. And what do you make of the next 3 to 5 years, sort of longer term for this space and just general outlook?
Okay, just to go back before I do so,
Sure.
looking at, for example, what's happened over the last, say, 8, 9, 10 months, that we've seen obviously a bear market. I think one thing that we have seen here is a good thing, is that we've seen the weak hands leave the market, right? What we've seen now is the people that actually understand and do get crypto a little bit better. I'm not going to say it's the whole market, but I'll say it's the majority now, is the right money to be left in the market. So this is a positive thing. In terms of how we're going to go on over the next 5 years or so, I think we're going to see something absolutely fantastic flourish out of cryptocurrencies at this present time. Like I mentioned earlier, and like I touched on earlier, what we're working with is absolutely, without a doubt, outstanding. Cryptocurrencies are going to change the world as we know it. How much they're going to change the world, only time will tell. Only time will tell what these cryptocurrencies are going to be worth. But when it comes to the whole prediction side of things, it's not something that I'm willing to comment at this moment in time. It's too tough to tell at this present time. But with that said, I think there's going to be some serious value in these coins within 5 to 10 years. But I also would err on the caution side to retail investors out there or institutions alike, is that I do believe a lot of these coins are going to get weeded out. So at the moment, we've got thousands of coins that you can look at and thousands of coins that you can invest into. My belief is that 10% of these coins will be around in 10 years' time, because there are a lot of projects that are doing things right, and there are a lot of projects that are doing things wrong. And as the education around this space is growing, so is the education around the people that are actually purchasing into these tokens and these coins. And it's not a fool's market anymore. A silly comment I like to make about 2016, 2017 was it was almost a case where, a lot of people were making money regardless of their intelligence or regardless of their background within investment. However, 2018 is being a telling time. We have seen those weak hands leave the market. And going forward, I think we're going to be in a very strong spot. But in terms of values, we can have this conversation, in 6 months' time. But now I'm not prepared to make a comment on that.
Yeah, I would agree for you on the most part. I think we are going through a transition. I think in 3 to 5 years' time, it's not going to be ICOs. ICOs would have sort of died out and been weeded out by then. I think it's more equities transitioning to the blockchain.
We're already seeing that.
Yeah.
We're already starting to see that transition happen. And, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. You've got the SEC saying things are securities. You've got other people not deeming them as securities.
Yep.
There's still a lot of confusion out there at the moment.
Yeah.
And as this confusion starts to kind of get wheedled out, I think we're going to be in a position, like you say, where we're going to have a bit more clarity there.
Yeah. I mean, ICOs are almost dead. It's now a game of, you touched on equity, so game of SDOs. You're seeing a lot of VC money pour in, institutional money pour in. So yeah, interesting times.
Yeah,
One thing I wanted to just sort of, as we start to wrap up, so let's say someone who wants to know more about crypto may not have the time to look into it or doesn't really have the knowledge up to date. They're trying to sort of get into it and they want to sort of reach out to you or speak to you about the advisory service that your desk offers. how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, no problem at all. If you go to the Bitstocks website, you can either register for an account where we can obviously have a conversation off the back of receiving your details. You can drop us a line also through the website. More than happy to speak to anybody who's interested in crypto and to run them through obviously exactly what's happening at this present time. As I do accept that this is a bit of a minefield. Stupid thing, I think it was from Andreas Antonopoulos, if I'm not incorrect. He spoke about Bitcoin, right? And he said, call it Bitcoin, right, in the first place. Straight away, you imagine you're talking about a physical coin rather than a digital asset, right? And I think these are the kind of things that just at its very infancy can be so confusing to people, right? And just having a chat with somebody who is knowledgeable and understanding of the market, and it's not just myself, we've got a good portfolio managing team here who can provide that education to people. Not only that, but we are doing meetups. It's probably one of the best ways for someone to come along is to come up to our meetup, which is going to be on the 30th of this month. And yeah, I'd encourage people to come down. They're free tickets. We're based in Holborn. So yeah, if you've got an opportunity, that'd be great.
Do you invite absolutely everyone down? Is it for more, beginners, or can we sort of expect really detailed conversation too with selected people who ask questions?
It'll be a mixture of both.
Sure.
It'll be a mixture of both. What we don't want to do is kind of go to one end of the market or the other. We want to be there to just have a chat about cryptos. We'll run through a little presentation of kind of our view of the state of the market at the moment. And then it's just an open discussion for people to speak amongst each other, come and find us and have a chat with us. It's about, the community really. It's about building it and sharing our knowledge with people. At the end of the day, if people don't understand about cryptos, regardless from the other side, it's not going to be something that takes off. So the more the education is spread, the better it is for everybody.
Yeah, and we'll link up all the meetup description, meetup sort of link and register link in the bio, in the description box. As much as James is a super knowledgeable man in the space, no, he will not charge any money to speak to you. It's all free. The event's free. If you want to reach out to James, he's very happy to speak to you as well, and have a little chat with you. So yeah, mate, it's been a pleasure having you on, James. I don't know if you have any thoughts or anything you want to leave people with before we wrap up.
To be honest with you, it's been a great podcast with you guys. I really appreciate you having me on. I look forward to obviously being on the podcast more often in the future. It'd be nice to do it more with you guys. But yeah, I think if there's a message to leave, it's about education. Make sure you educate yourselves before you actually get involved in this space and understand truly what you're doing before. So, speak to experts, such as ourselves, and we can help guide you down that difficult path.
Beautiful. Just before we wrap up, Stephen, one thing I wanted to speak to you about. So we discussed this earlier this morning. Mm-hmm. Over the weekend, I noticed the Nexo, which is the lending platform, they'd actually jumped a few significant places by market cap. And that was purely, so at one point yesterday, on Sunday, they had done around 35% gains in 24 hours. And that was off the back of the news that they had added Ripple as a collateral option for their loans. Now, one thing that I'm super, super excited for and amped for, as is everyone else here, is that Bitstocks will also be launching a loans platform as part of the wider ecosystem and Bitstocks platform that we'll be launching soon. This is currently in the works. So we'll be going on a roadshow in a few months. And please, keep your eyes peeled. We'll be coming out with updates very soon, but it will not be just a loans offering. It will be a multitude of different services to be a fully fledged, essentially you could call it I can't really use the word bank, but a crypto service to offer everything beyond just loans, payments, and many other services all in one sort of unified offering. So we'll come out with details soon in terms of how we offer a very competitive stance versus anyone else in the space. We can't reveal too much. I wish. I'm just dying and itching to reveal the information, but currently it's too soon. But please keep your eyes peeled. I'm sure. I know you just want to burst out with information, but you can't.
I think it really is, when you actually look at the core of these projects, it really is amazing how underdeveloped they are, and there are so many drawbacks. We believe we've come up with an innovative solution that allows you to, in essence, put the vast majority of cryptos up as collateral. But like you said, it's a conversation for another time.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to go back to the grind to carry on working on all of that exciting stuff. In one of the upcoming episodes, we're going to sit down and chop it up with CEO Michael Hudson off the back of the last podcast episode, which was, make sure you go and check that out, actually. It was Michael Hudson with Dr. Craig Wright of Enchain. And it was a very, very detailed discussion, in depth, I can't really, in the space, that all the podcasts I've listened to and material I've watched online, I've never really seen a discussion go into such depth in this space. So please make sure you check that out. I think it's 1 hour and 40 minutes long.
Yeah, it's 1 hour 40 minutes.
It took me about 6 hours or a bit longer than that to watch because I kept pausing, rewinding, opening a tab on Google, researching what they just said. It just went on and on and on. So super exciting. If you're into your mathematics and everything beyond that, cosmology, numbers, just make sure you check that out. But it's the deep underlying fundamentals and mathematics behind Bitcoin. So check that out, and we'll catch up with Michael Hudson soon on a recap of that episode. We're going to sit down and discuss that with him. But thanks very much for listening, guys. Please hit the comments, hit the subscribe button and the notification so you're aware of when we release a video. You'd also be getting this on other platforms such as Spotify, iTunes, and everything else. And we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Take care.
Cheers.